So ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to yet again another student interview on the channel, and today we're actually joined with Jordy. I think the majority of these student interviews I'm doing, everybody started from zero, which I think is very, very powerful for those of you watching who are also at zero, very much a beginner, kind of have no experience, you don't really know what to do, you don't know how things are structured, you've never, worked with a client in that kind of industry or just in that scenario, right? Like working with clients, I think when you've never worked with a client, it's a very daunting thing, but I think a lot of these student interviews are showing that it's very achievable. You can speak to a client in a way where you can sell them comfortably with it, with having no experience. And if you know the tricks of the trade, you know how to deliver results, well, you can do that as well without having any past experience. I think, again, that's another issue that a lot of people face is like, how do I sell a client on a service that I've never performed before? I've never got any results with? Well, you need to know the right things. You need to implement on the right ideas, the right strategies, all that type of stuff, right? And I think a lot of these student interviews are really showing that it's very achievable. Obviously, I myself did it, but I think people think that I started out where I am, but people forget I didn't. I was very much like everybody, probably like yourself watching this video right now, very much like yourself, just at the beginner stages, kind of don't really know the right path to navigate. You don't know what to do, what to say on sales calls. You don't know a lot, right? Because you've not been in the industry for that long. Maybe you've not consumed enough content yet, and you're still a little bit like, how does it work? What do we do, right? I was there. But I think these student interviews give a lot of perspective into other people's stories that were also there, that also started in the exact same place that you're in right now. And Jordy is very much one of those people, right? He's from, I believe he said he was from the Bronx. So really all odds were stacked against him instantly, right? And this is what I don't want to give too much away. He goes into this in the interview, but all odds were stacked against him, and he's still come out of it. And now he's ramped his agency to around 15,000 a month. Again, at the point of recording this, probably when you're watching, he'll be above 30, 40, 50,000 a month at the rate that he's growing right now. It's tremendously insightful to see how quick he's growing, and he actually goes into how he's growing so quickly. He's been routinely signing clients month on month on month, and he kind of walks through his strategy and how he's actually booking in meetings and signing clients. Jordy's in the e-com niche, as most of these student interviews are. But yeah, go ahead, as always, put aside some time, take some notes, because obviously taking notes and referring back to it is really how you're going to able to extract as much as you can from these interviews. And most interviews on YouTube are about buy my course because this is the results it can get and it's amazing and whatnot. And really in the interviews I don't really talk about the Quantum Leap e-com agency program, right? Like, I'll tell you now, if you are interested in joining, you can book in a call below with our student success manager Daniel. He'll walk you through everything. But what I really try and strive for inside of the actual interview is to try and extract the student, whoever it may be, their ideas, their philosophies on scaling, on growing businesses, how they've got to where they are. And yes, the Quantum Leap program has helped them, but they've also implemented other ideas and other things as well. And that's what I really try and dig deep into. How have they gotten to where they are? What do they feel as though has helped them the most? How did they go from, a lot of people send hundreds of emails, right, and don't get any meetings. Then all of a sudden something changes and they're able to start to scale up and book in meetings consistently and sign clients consistently month on month on month. It's like, well, what was that change? What did you, what was different? How did you go from, sending 1,000 emails, not getting any meetings booked, to getting a meeting booked for every 50 emails you send or whatever it is? And that's exactly some of the topics that we go through inside of this interview with Jordy. So with that being said, as always, go ahead, set aside some time, take some notes, and I will see you on the other side. Right, so welcome back to another video on the channel. Today we have another student interview with Jordy, who is inside of the Quantum Leap e-com agency program. He basically went from, I don't want to give too much of his story away just yet, dude, but he basically went from 0 to 14,000 a month with his agency you started in December, right?
That's when I signed my first client, right?
So so you signed your first client in December. So how long was the period before that? Like, when did you kind of officially take it seriously? And at the point, and something else I want to ask as well, because I know you mentioned you started obviously to take it seriously in December, signed your first client and whatnot, but at the point that you did start to take it seriously, what changed and what then enabled you to sign that first client?
So I started taking it serious in December. Like, I know a lot of the agency owners, they say you don't have an agency until you got your first client. So, but I started outreaching back in October-ish. So I was consistently
Okay.
outreaching from October. So that's like 2 months. I went 2 months, literally just straight outreach, keeping my head down, a bunch of no's, a bunch of
Yeah.
don't think about it, et cetera, et cetera. And then that December finally, signed my first client, and then it just been, up from there. But as far as what changed from October to December, you mean?
Hmm.
So
Yeah, like so if you was outreaching for like, and I asked this question on another interview as well. I just find it very interesting. Was it just more the fact that you were just consistent? Did you change something, from the point of it took you 2 months to sign your first client, the first month and a half, were you doing something entirely different that wasn't getting you clients? And then the last 2 weeks you like changed something, then that banged you the client? Or was it just that was just stay consistent and it was just eventually going to happen?
bro, I was just staying consistent, to be honest. Like, I remember being, going to the gym, coming back home and doing like 50 video pitches, Instagram 60 seconds. And
Yeah.
it was not working at all. Like, I don't know what I was doing, but I kept doing it every day, every day, every day. And I actually ended up signing a client from Long Reach Loom. So I immediately when I did that, I stopped doing Instagram. I'm like, bro, I'm not doing this anymore. It's too much time consuming. It's
Yeah.
annoying. It's just not working. So then I just doubled down on the loom. But as far as, what changed, I just stood consistent, to be honest. Like, I think that's the name of the game when it comes to the agency life, just staying consistent, being resilient. Doesn't matter how many no's you get, keep going. And yeah, at the end of the day, no matter what you do in like business, I have a big background in sports. It's the little actions taken over on a daily basis is what gets you the end game result. I know that's a famous book, like in the agency space, the Slight Edge. So yeah, it was just staying consistent, to be honest. It's not really a magic formula.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm curious as well, like before before October, when you started to take it seriously, what made you kind of transition from whatever you were doing? Maybe you was at, I don't know, you was at college, maybe you had a full-time job or whatever it may be. What kind of sparked that transition to go full-time, or at least take the agency extremely seriously, and why the agency business model?
Yeah, so I've never had a full job. I was in college in 2019 and I dropped out. But going back to like the whole story, childhood and stuff, I was always like I said, I got a big sports background. So from like ages 6 to 14, it was just baseball, 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 baseball. Nothing else. That was my plan A, my plan B. It was just I wanted to go big leagues, and unfortunately, I didn't keep going with the dream. I stopped doing it, quit, went to college, but college was never in the picture. It was never in my mind. The only reason I was going to go to college, at all, it was the only reason it was there was because it was going to be a stepping stone to get to the big leagues, because you need to go to school for it. But yeah, so long story short, 2019 dropped out, and then I was actually playing basketball with one of my cousins, and he got this ad from an agency owner making like 20K, 30K a month, and he's telling me, like, bro, we should try this. and I'm always like, I've always been a curious person. I've never been afraid to try things. But the funny thing is, I don't have before this, I didn't have no experience in business, entrepreneurship. I didn't even know this world existed until my cousin brought it up to me. I was in my own little baseball world. I'm in a bad neighborhood as well. So I was in that little world as well too. And when he showed me this, I was like intrigued. I didn't know this world even existed. So I was like, let's try it. I'm down. Let's try it. So my cousin already had the Tai Lopez course. So I kind of caught a break on that and just started watching his course, started learning a lot from Tai Lopez as well. And I decided to go into the agency life with my cousin. And back in 2019, we was in Local Legion first. So from there, we was doing a whole bunch of non-generated actions like website, a bunch of, dumb stuff. And the beginning of, so that was like the ending of 2019 from October to the ending. So then December came, obviously, the COVID and everything. Well, 2020, then 2020 came, the whole COVID and everything. So I decided to go off on my own and just do my own thing. I didn't, me and my cousin, close friend, we just didn't align, as far as personalities. It just wasn't the right fit. So I'm not sure if he's still doing it, but these guys was already entrepreneurs before me, so I was kind of like the little guy. I was learning about everything, and yeah, I even remember getting on calls with them, like weekly calls, and they were talking about all this financial markets, all this crazy language that I didn't understand. I was just lost in the whole call. I was just lost. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't, give my input because I didn't know anything. I didn't know about this world. So, and I didn't like feeling like that. So 2020, the beginning of 2020, I just stood to myself and literally like build it up myself as much as I can. I didn't start building my agency to the end of 2020 because of external reasons, but I still took advantage of the beginning of 2020, which was reading as much as I can. Because I felt like I was behind, and I had a lot of catching up to do. So I was reading a lot, learning about entrepreneurship, following other entrepreneurs, see how they acted, how they communicated, et cetera, et cetera. So then I was still in local legion at that point as well. So I was still in my mindset, like, I'm still going to do local legion. I didn't know the ecom worlds existed. So I only knew about ecom because of, I read a lot about Jeff Bezos, and obviously everybody knows Amazon, but exactly. So I didn't know about it until I came across one of your videos on YouTube. This was like summerish, I think. So I was listening to, how easy it was to scale in the e-com industry. So that's what really shifted my mindset to go into the e-com industry, how fast you can scale. Not only can you charge, regular base fees, but you can charge percentage fees or get compensated on how much you bring the client, et cetera, et cetera. So, I told myself, like, this is a no-brainer. Like, how is it even, why should everybody should be doing e-com? So then I literally watched all your videos. I think the first night. The first night I literally watched all your YouTube videos about 2 times, I think, twice. So I watched all of them twice, all your econ ones, because I didn't know anything. So I felt like I had a lot of catching up to do, as I said. And like I told you before the call, I literally followed all your rules. I went to hire the media buyer. I went up to hire the media buyer and started outreaching. That's the only 2 things I did from the jump. And I just stood consistent and signed my first client December, signed another client in January, signed 2 more clients in March, and then as I said, April was the slowest month. But that's that kind of roller coaster childhood background got me to here. So it's been a crazy ride for sure.
That's wild, dude. And I'm curious as well. Obviously, you just mentioned there, like, you was like consistently signing clients. And obviously I know you mentioned before we started, but I'd love for everybody else to kind of get a bit of a understanding as to why you were signing clients every single month. And then why April, you said it was the slowest month, right? You've not signed a client in April. So I'm curious for you to go a bit deeper into the reasonings behind that, because there's a very distinct reason. It's not just like, the environment, like no clients are, it's a very distinct reason as to why.
Yeah, for sure. So as I told you, like, I didn't sign any clients. It's funny because I didn't sign any clients in April last month, but it was my biggest month. I hit 14K, the ROAS deal, et cetera. But I didn't sign any clients because the first couple months of me starting my agency, I was literally just doing what you and all the big other agency owners told me to do. Outreach, focus on getting meetings, focus on getting calls, sales, et cetera, et cetera. So I didn't focus on like websites. I didn't focus on, what's another thing that people do? Logos, branding, personal, like social media. I didn't focus on anything. So once I hit a certain level, once I hit 10K, I felt like now it's necessary. Like, let me start working on, I would say now, people are going to be searching on my names. These big brands are going to be searching on my name, my company name. So I took a step back on outreaching to focus on the extras. That's what we that's what I'm going to call it, the extras. Like my website, I build it out the website, I build out a sales page. Got a couple dummy accounts for outreaching. Now I'm going to start ramping up in outreaching. So was focusing on that. Also hiring team members. I have a media buyer, going to bring him on full time soon. And I have a VA just brought her on to start ramping up the couple, in the months moving forward. And I also have a lead sourcer just scraping leads, qualified leads for me. So yeah, like it's crazy because watching these interviews, like I told you, I was always watching these interviews, binge watching them all night, like yours, a lot of all the interviews. I literally watched all of them, and it's kind of crazy to be getting interviewed now. But I've always thought that once you reach a certain level, those dry spurts wasn't going to happen. So it kind of slapped me in the face that, like, bro, it can still happen. So stay focused.
Yeah, for sure. As I said to you as well before, like it happens to everybody, and it's one of those things that you have to go through for you to realize truly yourself. Like, I could sit here, somebody else could sit here and say, like, make sure you keep doing the fundamentals of things that got, that the reason you got to, there is a reason you got to 10K a month. It was because you were filling the calendar, you were selling, and you was delivering at a high, so don't stop doing those. But then you're like, but I'm, bringing in 10, 20, 50 grand a month, whatever it is. It's like, I can stop. It's like, well, no, because then the next month, like you said, it's a bit of a peculiar situation for you because April is actually your biggest month, but there's no new client signed. And
weird.
Yeah, I think it's something everybody's got to go through.
Yeah, for sure. And it's funny because I did have calls in April. I had a bunch of calls, but there were a lot of unqualified calls. And there were a lot of verbal agreements for May. So May should be a big month, depending on what happens.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, exactly. Because I'm noticing now that, I reached a certain level in the agency as far as clients, income, etc. And I remember asking you this in one of our calls, like, hey, should I start offering guarantees? Should I do this? Should I do that? And one of the main reasons why I wanted to start offering guarantees is to put myself on a certain level where I'm just not chasing every client anymore. I just want to work with qualified brands. So even if I wanted to, like, I can't because I don't want to be refunding, left and right. So I think that's a little harder now since you just can't say yes to every client like before, because now I have a guarantee in place, there's more qualifications. So I think that played a part too. But long story short, it was on me. I wasn't focused on outreaching. I was focused on other things. So for sure.
Yeah. And so you're saying that in April, you still got calls being booked in and whatnot, but you didn't have a focus on outreach. So how are those calls coming through and how are majority of your calls being booked now at the stage that you're at?
Yeah. So even though I'm not focusing on outreach like 100%, I'm still doing outreach. I don't think you should ever just stop completely because then your pipeline is just going to get super dry and it's going to take a lot of time to regain the momentum. But yeah, I still do looms, like 5 to 7 looms a day. And I still have the email outreach running in the back end. So most of the calls came from the loom, but I did have a couple calls from email as well. And yeah, like I said, most of them, like 80% of them were unqualified and 20% were verbal agreements. So I actually have the VA now outreaching through Instagram as well. And I did get 2 book calls from the VA from Instagram, which is pretty interesting. I never knew it. It didn't work for me, so pretty interesting. But yeah, 2 book calls from her through Instagram, and one of those were unqualified, and one of them was a verbal agreement for me. So, but
okay, cool.
Yeah, to answer your question, I even though I wasn't focusing 100%, like I wasn't scaling, I really never stopped. I just lowered the amount, just took the foot off.
You just maintained it.
Yeah.
Got it. So how does the agency look at the moment in terms of like client roster as well as your team?
Yeah, so I have 3 team members, the media buyer, VA, and a lead sourcer. And I have 4 clients, 5 with a verbal agreement. So yeah, 5-ish, but you can say 4-ish, but yeah, 5-ish, 4-ish, you can pick.
Right.
And they're in all different industries, obviously the e-com. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So that's how it looks.
Got it. So you don't focus on a sub niche?
No, like they're in different sub niches, but they're all in the e-com industry.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Yeah.
That's I always get asked the question, like, do you focus on a sub niche, or what sub niche are you in? It's like, in my opinion, if a brand's qualified, it doesn't matter what niche they're in. The reason we'll be able to get them results is because they're qualified. They could be selling mics, or they could be selling, I don't know, like cameras or whatever, whatever else it is, right? Something completely different. yeah, that's interesting that you're the same.
Yeah, exactly. And it's crazy because I remember telling you this. One of my first few clients in the e-com industry was a unicorn client, and it's a heels company. Like they sell competition heels that don't, competition, women that bodybuild. It's not for the whole year. It's from like January to, I believe, April or March is like the biggest time of the year. So
Got it.
we didn't know that client would end up being a unicorn client. So that's pretty weird. Like I said, pretty
Right.
weird industry.
Is that yeah, it is for sure. Is that the client that had the big ROAS deal this month or last month?
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
Interesting. Nice. So what's the structure with her?
So we actually we waived the ROAS deal last month. It was the last month, and we got a bigger retainer. So 4K per month, no ROAS. Okay. Yeah, because she's, when I first signed her on, it was in December, and I remember you dropped, again, following your YouTube instructions. You told us to, yes, it is the hardest time of the year to sign clients, but do strictly ROAS to have the long term going into the new year. So I was like, all right, let me just do no fee up front, just do a ROAS. And, she ended up being one of our biggest clients. So they got to get advice on that. Yeah,
for sure.
Bro,
so I'm curious.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
like I literally do everything you tell me.
Yeah, that's dope, dude. That's super, super cool to hear. So I'm curious as well, like, apart from that one client where it was like pretty much based on the video that I published, I remember that video as well. But apart from that client where it was just like a performance only, how do you usually go about structuring your pricing for clients? Because obviously you're billing pretty good numbers, right? Like 4 clients, you brought in 14K last month. Like that's pretty high billables per client. So how do you go about structuring your pricing and pitching it in a way where the client's like, yeah, let's do it, where it makes sense to them for them to move forward?
Yeah. So before, my minimum was just 1,500, but once I started offering the guarantee, I bumped it up to 2K. So like, it's funny because I don't really do much selling in my calls. I just literally ask the questions. Like, if I feel like I can help you, then I'm going to give you an offer, which is most of the time our minimum. But I don't really hard sell that much. Like, if I can't help you, then like I can't help you. Like you say all the time, like if you don't have a product market fit, like we can't help you. You got problems that, we can't help. So, but I don't hard sell. I just literally ask the questions and throw my offer. And once I mention the guarantee and, structure it in a way where like, hey, there's no downside, worst case scenario, you'll get we'll fully refund you. Plus we'll throw in an extra, $200 just for wasting your time. Yeah. Kind of took the idea. And most of the time, like they tell me, one of the clients that I signed in March, she told me she was just coming off a burned agency situation. And she told me like, hey, there's no downside. Why shouldn't we try this? So let's go. I'm down. So I was like, yeah, for sure.
It's like people try and say all the time, like position in a way where there's no downside or whatever, or like, for like the core position in a way where there's no downside. But like, it doesn't matter how you position it. At the end of the day, the black and white of it is if there's no guarantee in place, then there is a downside, no matter how you position it. They could lose money or they could be wasting time. You know what I mean? But when you offer the guarantee, there is literally no way, there's literally no downside. And the other thing as well is like, I think a lot of agency owners, especially when they're starting out, or, they may even be at, 10, 20K a month, but they've never done the guarantee or gone down the guarantee route. And they're super scared to do it. They don't feel like they should be doing it. They're like, it just makes them super anxious and whatnot. But it's like, at the end of the day, you don't want to be working with clients where you're not getting them good results. So if you're not getting a client at least a break even, you don't want to have them on your client roster. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, you don't want to be working with them. So you may as well, it's in your best interest because you don't want to be working with them if you can't get them good results, and it's in their best interest because obviously they get their money back.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that kind of the thought process that because I know you didn't start out with doing guarantees, right?
It was because of those two reasons. One of the reasons was to hold our agency to a high standard, not just chasing after any client. Like now I'm forced to work with qualified brands, but the other reason was to remind myself, like, hey, if we can't help them, then we just don't want to work with you. It's not to sound arrogant, but it's like, is in your best interest. We're not just going to be chasing an invoice, and we're not going to be chasing a contract. So That was pretty much it.
Yeah, for sure. And how did it feel making the transition? Because as I say, I think a lot of the times agency owners, they don't want to do guarantees. They know they know it's the right thing to do. They know it's
Right.
going to help everything. Like you say, I really like that idea about holding yourself and your agency to a higher standard. It's going to do that. Conversion rates increase, caliber of client, like everything increases, but there's that, it is almost like a huge barrier that's got to be, cleared before they can actually go into it. And not a lot of agency owners are able to clear the barrier. So how did it feel for you to make that transition?
Bro, I was excited. I felt like,
okay.
Yeah, I was excited. I started to feel like a real business owner, offering something that can genuinely help. I've never been afraid to try things. And worst case scenario, like if it doesn't work, we'll just try it with another client. Maybe it wasn't our fault. Maybe we couldn't actually help that client, so it was better in the long run. So yeah, I mean, and if you have proven results, and if you have somebody doing the results for you, or you're confident in yourself, then why not? And at the end of the day, if the client, obviously there's black swan events that happen, you never know. You're not 100% confident, but most of the time when you take on a client and the results aren't there, is because you didn't do your job in the qualification process. So it's really all on you, in my opinion.
100%. I want to dig into that a little bit as well. Like, there's a fine line, right? Because I think some people just don't know how to run ads, right? Some people just try and do like optimize for traffic, and they do this and they do that, and they're like, why are we not getting any results? Or the copy's horrific, or whatever it is, But there's a large majority, not a large majority, there's a number of agency owners, I would say, who know how to run ads, but the clients that they've worked with, they've not got any results. So that really knocks their confidence, right? But obviously, most of the time in those instances, it's not that you can't run ads, it's that the brand itself. And I'm not about delegating blame, like saying like, oh, it's not me, it's them, or I'm not about that. I'm all about looking inward before you look outward, before you start delegating blame and whatnot. But there's a big majority of the time where it is the brand, it is nobody wants the product. Nobody can, you go to the website and actually convert because the website doesn't convert. There's no good create, all that type of stuff. So what are some maybe 3-4 things that you really look out for when you're on a sales call with a client and you're like, yeah, 100%, we can bring them on with a guarantee. We can guarantee them these results because we're that confident. What does that brand usually have?
Yeah, so I follow your 6 qualification process. The initial perfect business before the call, reaching out to them. But on the call, I basically just go into the numbers, rev, profit margins, just to see how hard it is going to be able, how hard it is going to, be to scale. Projected revenue, like where you want to be in 12 months, the goals, the mindset, how do you plan on getting there? Content operation, how easy it is to get content. What's another one? Yeah, I think that's the biggest ones. Also, if at the end, I'm not really sure, like I'm still on the fence, I'll ask them like, hey, can we go inside of your ads manager and see, see if we can help. Let me see what type of ads you're running now. That's when I'm still on the fence at the end of the call. But if I, get a potential client that everything is top notch, then we're ready to go. Like throw the guarantee in. Yeah.
For sure. So in those times where, and so just on as a side note, you do a one call close?
Yes.
Unless you have to look in the ads manager, you then go away and come back on a second call?
Unless I'm still on the fence after looking at the ads manager and I have to get on the call with my team member.
Okay, got it. So when you are on the fence, you ask them, hey, can I look inside of your ads manager? What are you looking for inside of the ads manager that is like, okay, cool, yeah, we can actually bring them on board as a client? Like what's the, again, 1 or 2 things that you try and find inside of the ads manager? What are you looking for? So
for starters, the fundamentals, to see if they're utilizing the fundamentals of advertising, copy, creative, offer, et cetera, but also looking for how complicated they're trying to do things, because the way we get results is we keep it simple. So if they're trying to exclude this and include that, all these complicated things, we'll tell them like, we can definitely help. I'll know from there we can definitely help. Also, the specific numbers as well. What is the CTR? Click-through rate. What is the ROAS? Obviously, being like you taught us, being put in a pedestal. But yeah,
Yeah.
more specifically is the fundamentals. If they're not doing the fundamentals in the highest, in the best way, then I know we can help them when we come in and we do start utilizing, the copy in the best way, the offer in the best way, creative
Yeah.
audiences, et cetera, et cetera. So for sure, I try to go deep, but I'm not an expert in ads. So when I'm still on the fence, I try to get my team member on because he's obviously, I still learn from him on a daily basis. So
For sure. Yeah, I like that. And that, yeah, that's one of the biggest things. Like, obviously, like when you have a client and they're already running ads, and if they're doing something that's actually they're doing the fundamentals correctly, they've got good copy, they've got good creatives, they've got good structure, they've got good offers running and whatnot. It's like, obviously you can't expect to come into an ad account and do the same thing that the client was doing previously and expect different results,
Right.
So for example, when we look inside ad accounts, like one of the big things that I like to see, the situation is where they're running terrible ads, everything's horrific, and they're still getting a good ROAS. Like in those instances, like for me, that's like the absolute best, right?
Right. I think that's the most like exciting thing you can see because once you get in there, it's just gonna spike through the roof. So
Yeah, exactly. So, dude, I mean, overall, like this is just like a general question that I like to ask, get a bit of insight on.
sure.
Looking back on I say looking back on your journey, you've been doing it 4 or 5 months now, and you've ramped from literally zero to 14 grand a month, which is wild. But looking back, say back in the period of October to December, right? In your time frame, in that period where you were starting outreach and whatnot, and you were just trying to start your agency, build your agency, what's like 1 or 2 things that you would tell yourself to not speed up your growth, because your growth has been tremendously quick anyway, but you know what I mean? Just like, what's 1 or 2 things that you would go back and tell yourself to, make your journey a little bit easier, make it a little bit more, I suppose, scale slightly quicker, sign clients earlier. What's 1 or 2 things that you would tell yourself? Just like everybody watching, or not everybody, most people watching are between that 0 to 5,000 a month range. So as I say, to everybody watching as well, like what would you say to more beginner agency owners who are who like sit here and look at you right now at like 14, 15 grand a month and think, oh my God, it would be amazing to get there?
Yeah. So that's a great question. Personally, what held me back, like I said, I wasn't afraid to try this. I wasn't afraid to try that. What held me back is a little different, was how I was as a person before getting into the entrepreneurship space. So how I communicated, how I how I perceived certain situations, how most of it was how I communicated, because I didn't know the type of language that the business world spoke. And that was kind of, I'm not really an insecure person, but that was a big insecurity that held me back. I used to think like, hey, this regular kid from the Bronx, bad area, bad environment, like people aren't going to take me serious. So, but one thing I would tell agency owners, like starting off, one of the biggest things that helped me was remaining a student. So I'm always willing to learn. Always, like that's what I did the whole 2020. I literally didn't take a day off. I know Bill Gates has this funny quote, like from age 20 to 30, he didn't take a day off. That's kind of crazy. I don't know if I can do that 10 years, but I don't know. The whole 2020, like I didn't take a day off. I was reading every single day. I was watching YouTube videos, yours, the other big agency owners, like literally learning as much as I can, asking out for help, seeking out for help. It was never a time where I felt like I was too good to ask for help, or that I knew everything, or that I knew this, I knew that, or I was in a place where like I don't need any help. Even now, reaching 10K, passing 10K, like I'm getting ready to get in Centaurian agency. So like that's one thing I would say, like remain a student, learn as much as you can, become a learning machine, because the more you learn, obviously, the more you earn. But the second thing I would say is, dude, just stay consistent. I know it sounds cheesy, but like if you do something, like if you do something literally every single day on a daily basis, eventually you're going to get what you want. if you're doing, obviously, if you're taking the right actions. You can't just be, doing revenue driven actions. But if you're taking the right actions, you're doing it every day, you're iterating as well. You can't just keep doing something, it's not working, and just stay doing the same thing. Obviously, you got to change it up. There's a good book called Thinking in Systems. That's actually what I'm focusing on now. System building an agency. And that book talks about how, to build better systems in your business, agency, your life, is to find out in the system where it's broken and fix there. So that goes back to, if you're doing something and you're still not getting the result, the outcome that you want, maybe you should go back, find out where the system is broken, iterate there. But yeah, long story short, just stay consistent. That's what literally helped me. And, watching these interviews, the main, the common thing that I seen was staying consistent. Consistency. That was the main common thing from literally almost every agency owner that I learned from, that I watched, et cetera, et cetera. So those two things, consistency and remaining a student, becoming a learning machine, was definitely the two biggest things in my journey so far, for sure.
Yeah, for sure. I love that. And I think it all really ties in together, right? Like with taking, consistent action over a long period of time on one thing, eventually you're going to become better at it. Eventually you're going to get, as you say, word for word, eventually you're going to get what you want. Eventually you're going to hit 10K, 5K, 50K, 100, whatever it is. But there's also a fine line between delusion and, consistency, right? Like you can't keep consistent on the same thing over and over again if it's not working, because then you're just delusional. So that's where learning, and as you say, consuming more content, more knowledge and whatnot from books, from programs, from just YouTube, right? Learning and then obviously enables you to see, like you say, the kinks, the breaks in the system, which then enable you to fix those breaks in the system, which means you are able to complete the system a lot better. If you're continually completing the system, you're going to continually, generate the outputs that you want, whatever that may be, 10, 20, 30 grand a month. So I think that all really ties in together. And I think that's something huge that is tremendously important, like you say, when starting.
Bro, huge. Like if there's one thing that's going to take you far, especially as an agency owner where this game is mostly no's, like it is consistency and staying on top of the game, because what worked last year, it's not going to work this year. What worked last week, it's not going to work this week. So if I had the chance starting out, I would have bought you didn't have a course at the point at that time, but I would have bought a course if I had it, but I just didn't have the capital. So I try to watch as much free content as I can. And thankfully I did, because the first two clients that I signed with was because of your YouTube channel. So there's really nothing should be stopping you from taking advantage of everything out there. It's 2021. The internet is extremely powerful. So
yeah, for sure, dude. I absolutely love that. And I'm excited to get you back on in a couple months when you're crossing 50 a month, 100 a month, whatever it may be. And yeah, to everybody watching, I deeply hope that you found some value, some actionable insights. And yeah, with that being said, I will see you inside of the next video.